Have you all ever noticed that in some movies, how the architecture will start talking before the actors? Not out loud, but in the echoes, the hallways, the spaces that look beautifully designed for someone who never showed up. By the late 60s, Hollywood had built itself a new house, a perfect modernist house, all clean lines and elegant surfaces, with absolutely no belief left in the people walking through it. This is the moment the beautiful image turns into a spiritual echo. And that echo sounds an awful lot like Lee Marvin's footsteps, a man moving through architecture that has quietly given up on the world. In this video, we're going to talk about how we got here, how Hollywood went from the warm human spaces of the Golden Age to the cold, alienating modernism of the 60s and 70s. A descent, a slow one, a staircase that Hollywood went down one film at a time. Let's take the first step, shall we?
Architectural Outcast.
Before we start talking about corruption, paranoia, dystopias, and all the other ways that architecture goes wrong in the 70s, we have to begin with the film that quietly changed the visual language of Alienation, Point Blank. And what's fascinating is there is nothing about this film that's loud. Well, except for the gunshots. There's no grand speeches, no dramatic spectacle. Just a man moving through spaces that don't care if he's alive or dead. Walker isn't moving through the city. He's moving through geometry. Clean lines, hard edges, surfaces that echo but don't listen. This is modernism stripped of human purpose. Beautiful to look at, perfect for the camera, but completely indifferent to the person inside. If Point Blank is what happens when architecture becomes empty, Taxi Driver is what happens when that emptiness starts to rot. Travis Bickle isn't wandering through the city the way characters did in the Golden Age. He's drifting to a world that has already given up on itself. The Golden Age city was crowded, chaotic, alive. People shouted, newspapers flew, cabs honked. It was like a messy civic heartbeat. But New York in Taxi Driver feels like that heart stopped a long time ago, and the flies are gathering. This isn't the city as a stage for human stories. This is the city as a fever dream, where the architecture itself seems exhausted. Even the interiors feel wrong. The campaign office is bright, clean, orderly, and yet somehow it feels more alienating than the street outside. New York isn't rejecting Travis because he's strange. It's rejecting him because the architecture has stopped holding space for anybody. The scaffolding of community, the spaces where people once belonged, are now just backdrops for loneliness. If Taxi Driver shows us a city collapsing at the street level, Chinatown shows something far worse. A world where the corruption is built straight into the architecture. Jake Gitz isn't wandering through a broken system, he's walking through a beautiful one that's already been hollowed out. Look at the buildings in the movie. They're elegant. A little modern, a little classical, sunlit and composed. They're the visual language of a California dream that Hollywood helped invent. But the beauty is a lie. The civic story underneath has already rotted away. The water systems are dry, the fields are dying, and the social institutions meant to protect the public are the ones bleeding it dry. The architecture just doesn't look good. It looks trustworthy, which makes the betrayal sting all the more. Even the wealthy homes feel unsettling. They have space, comfort, refinement, and absolutely no moral center. Hollywood once used architecture to say, this is who we are. By Chinatown, the architecture is saying something very different. This is who owns you. If Chinatown is showing us a world where the civic myth has already collapsed, the Parallax View shows us something far more unsettling. A world where the architecture itself feels like it is hunting you. Because this is the film where modernism stopped being empty or corrupt and started becoming predatory. Take a look at the spaces in the movie. Vast civic plazas, perfectly symmetrical interiors, monumental dams, endless staircases, wide flat panes of glass and concrete. Spaces that should symbolize public power and democratic optimism instead feel like they were designed intentionally to erase individual human beings. This is the first film where modernism becomes a tool, not for beauty, not for aspiration, but for disorientation and control. And the civic architecture, the plazas, the halls, the monumental staircases, they feel like they've been designed to guide you into blind spots. You know, the spaces where no one can hear you disappear. If the Parallax View is architecture turned predatory, then A Clockwork Orange is architecture giving up the performance entirely and embracing its role as an instrument of control. There's nothing subtle here. This isn't modernism as elegance or inspiration. This is modernism that's been stripped down to raw concrete and hard angles. Architecture that doesn't seek to seduce or uplift. Architecture that seeks compliance. Look at the world Alex lives in. The apartment blocks are massive, heavy, and imposing. The structures look less like homes and more like cooling towers for human behavior. The interiors, they're not much better. Everything is hard, glossy, artificial. It's a world where softness has been designed out of existence. Even the pleasure spaces look clinical and weaponized. The Korova Milk Bar looks like a showroom designed by somebody desperately trying to be avant-garde, but ended up accidentally designing a psychological experiment instead. Nothing is warm. Nothing is human. Nothing is accidental. Here's the thing. The architecture in A Clockwork Orange isn't expressing a dystopia. It is the dystopia. After the cruelty of A Clockwork Orange, Hollywood took a very different turn, but not a hopeful one. Logan's Run imagines a perfect future, a world without dirt, without decay, and without conflict, a paradise of smooth surfaces, soft light, and endless convenience. But look closer. Everything in this world is synthetic. The buildings are perfect. In a way, a mall interior is perfect. Clean, controlled, climate managed, and stripped of anything that has to do with real life. Even the people look mass-produced, color-coded, interchangeable, as if individuality was an outdated operating system. The architecture isn't expressing a society, it's expressing a marketing department's fantasy of what the future might look like. And once you realize that, the cracks in this world become impossible to ignore. The Carousel Arena is beautiful in that same perfectly lit, emotionally empty way. But underneath the spectacle, it's a death machine, a flawless stage for a ritual that hides its brutality behind elegance. After all the artifice, after the dystopias, after the illusions, Hollywood finally reaches the bottom of the staircase. And the bottom looks like this. Rows of identical desks, fluorescent lights humming overhead, a newsroom so orderly it feels less like a workplace and more like a filing cabinet large enough for people to walk through. All the President's Men isn't dramatic in the way of a dystopian film. There are no brutalist towers, no neon nightmares, no ritualistic futures. What it shows is something much quieter and much more unsettling. The architecture is polite, normal, reasonable. It's the type of place where nothing bad should happen. And that's exactly why it's terrifying. Because this is where trust collapses. Not in some dark alley or secret lab, but under fluorescent lights in a space designed for logic and order. Even the parking garage, with all of its concrete and echoing emptiness, feels less like a place to uncover the truth and more like a place where truth goes to quietly die. This is the final drop. Institutions that still function, still look respectable, still holding themselves together, but they've lost the soul that they were built to protect. The buildings aren't broken. The lights still work. The desks are neatly arranged. Everything looks normal. And that's the problem. This is the bottom of the staircase, a world where the architecture hasn't collapsed, but meaning has, where institutions still stand, but the trust that once filled them is long gone. And from this point, Hollywood has only one direction to go: out. By the end of the 1970s, Hollywood's architecture had walked as far as it could from the Golden Age. The front porches, the town squares, the newsrooms, the places that once made America feel like a shared home were replaced by corridors, plazas, towers, and grids. Spaces that looked beautiful, spaces that photographed flawlessly, but spaces that somewhere along the way stopped believing in the people inside them. That's the quiet tragedy of the era. Not that the architecture turned cold, but that the meaning faded before anybody noticed. Hollywood hit bottom, not with a dramatic collapse, but with the soft hum of fluorescent lights, a world that still functioned, but no longer felt like home. And that's where the story should have ended. But Hollywood did something unexpected. It tried to climb its way back out. Not by returning to meaning or community or the human-scaled worlds it once helped build, but by trying to resurrect the Golden Age image. In the next video, we're going to look at what Hollywood built in the 80s and 90s, and how it tried to reclaim the beauty it had abandoned, and how, in trying to recreate the image, it missed the meaning. A climb back up the staircase that didn't quite lead home. At any rate, I hope I gave you all something to think about, and until next time, y'all be safe. If you're all still here, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. While you're at it, why don't you like this video, subscribe to the channel, click that notification bell. You can hear me yammer on about something else next time, and feel free to share this video far and wide.
Please like and subscribe. Please leave a comment.